What were they looking for at Nancy's house this weekend? Joining me to help answer the question, Steve Fisher, private investigator, search and rescue pilot, and ground searcher, and Mike Gould, former New York police officer, retired Nassau County lieutenant and commanding officer. All right, Steve, I'll start with you. We saw some of those aerial shots that were being picked up by some of the news outlets out there. We saw what they were doing. What do you think they're looking for specifically in that search at Nancy's house over the weekend?
So when they're back by the septic tank with those probing poles, I think what they're doing there is, I think that's an evidence search, which is something in search and rescue we help with a lot of detectives. And I think they're looking for anything that could have been, discarded. It could be a weapon. It could be clothing. It could be anything that could have gotten thrown down there. And now they're just getting to a layer where they're getting out there and they're searching for evidence out in the wash and probing the tanks. And I think we'll see more of this because they're trying to get that next piece of evidence, that next footprint to get a direction and see what they can find. And also because anything they find could have the DNA on it that they need to find out who's responsible for this.
Mike Gould, so last Monday, the crime scene was released back to the family. There was like an announcement, and now they've been back, and then things got really intense over the weekend. What do you think's going on here?
Yeah, well, I think it's good signs. Good sign that law enforcement has kind of gone silent. I think they should have been a little more silent from the beginning, particularly the sheriff. I try to be very gentle with my critique because I've been in that situation. Things are unfolding very rapidly. But releasing a crime scene, look, Vinny, nobody lived in that house. It was empty. And it wasn't a commercial building. It wasn't a bank. So there was no reason to release the crime scene and have anybody coming. So that was a mistake. I think he acknowledged that. The sheriff's lack of knowledge of the videos on Instagram, he learned about that on Facebook. But be that what it may, the fact that law enforcement is silent and they're going back to the scene, this is great because behind the scenes, they are interviewing people constantly. Anybody that's been near that crime scene, anybody that knows, particularly the son-in-law, right? Not that he was involved in anything nefarious, but he is the last person that saw. He's the witness. He's the best witness. Did he see any headlights when he pulled down the street? As we said, like Cody said, it's dark out there. You can see headlights from a mile away. You could see illuminated different things. So as the son-in-law was dropping him off, the fact they keep going back to that house and then they take evidence from the house, there's a reason for it. Going into that cesspool using the sludge stick, of course, they're using that to feel for solid objects. Solid objects, hard solid objects shouldn't be in a cesspool. So there's sludge levels, water levels. So something's bringing them there. And I just feel that there's an intensive interviewing going on and re-interviewing people. And every time they get something, a tidbit of information, they go out and see if they can find evidence to corroborate that.
Steve, what are your thoughts about the topography, the geography, the ground itself, the vegetation, the home, the grounds? Is this easier or more difficult than other searches you've been involved with?
It's not a super difficult terrain for searching, especially in the early days when you can use thermal. And it's sparse enough that where you could spot, evidence from the air, from a drone, using those probing poles. I do think it's, I agree. I think it's great that they've gotten back out there. They're looking for that, all these pieces of evidence. But I do find it interesting that even the warrant or I guess it was a consensual search that was done last night at the sister's house. That's all being done by the sheriff's department. The FBI has not been involved in these searches, and that's interesting to me, considering they they came in and took over, which they should have with their crime scene ability, processing ability, but they're not involved in these last couple of days. It makes me wonder if they have a better idea of what's going on.
Big thanks, Steve Fisher. Mike Gould, great to have you. I'm sure we'll be speaking again about this. Coming up next, what were they looking for at Annie's house this weekend?